Hey friends, welcome back. We are in the second video, and in this video we are going to be making the icing and the sprinkles. So the idea is similar to make the icing. We're going to duplicate the donut and delete some mesh, some geometry, and then separate a little bit, make it a little bit thicker to create the icing, just like we did in the Blender Guru's donut tutorial. So how are we going to duplicate the donut? Well, select everything, Shift D to duplicate, and we have a duplicated donut. I'm going to also hit in for the flyout menu, go to, click on just the frame, and then now we have the node, and I'm going to label it icing, and then the color down here, I'm going to turn it to like this pale blue, and then the property size is the label size still be 64. And I'm not really going for like pretty colors. I'm just going for organization. I know light blue is icing. I know tan is donut, etc., etc. Now, what do we do here? Well, first, I'm actually going to delete the set material, and then I'm going to drag from this transform geometry out, and I'm going to type in mesh boo, B-O-O. And we see mesh 1, mesh 2. I'm going to make it mesh 1 and set it there. And then I'm going to control right click and drag and cut that wire. Then I'm going to drag from this set material, put it, no, sorry. I'm going to drag from this transform geometry, put it in mesh 2. And then I'm going to drag from the mesh boolean to a join geometry. There we are. And then from that join geometry out to the what we see. And now we see a glitched out donut, which could be cool in its own right, but I don't want that. I want a donut that is only icing. I want to see only icing. Drag from the donut to mesh 2. This is why we have the transform geometry. So you see how nothing is showing. Well, I'm a goober because that nothing means this is doing exactly what I want it to do. This mesh boolean as a like programming function gives and or. So it's like A or B, A and B, A and or B kind of thing. But one thing I forgot to do is I forgot to move the icing itself up 1/4 of an inch or 1/10 of an inch, because now we have an icing. Oh, that's kind of funky looking. I'm gonna go back up to that. So let's move it up 0.15 inches, and then we're gonna scale it out 1.04 on the X and the Y. And then we're probably thinking, why can we only see the icing? Well, that's because this join geometry is only showing the mesh boolean, which is basically saying the icing minus the donut is what we see. That's what this is happening right now. Mesh 1 minus mesh 2 out to the join geometry, out to what we see. So if I drag from this set material to this join geometry, now it's the math of icing minus donut out, but then also just the donut going out to the join geometry. I'm going to put him right there. I'm going to shift right click and add this little guy, and then press G to move it to where you see it is like two completely different thought processes going on right now. So we have the donut out like that, and then we have on a separate occasion the donut being used for the boolean. If you want to, here's something you can do. You can kind of play around with the Z translation, the scale for the X and the Y, and I guess the Z as well, but really the X and the Y, and then the curve circle radius and the curve and the profile curve radius. Play with those and just see what kind of look you get that's different than mine, because mine has a pretty standard edge around, and it's just kind of It's a little boring, but I'm going for boring right now. I'm going for just making a donut, you know? So just see what you got. See what you can play around with some of these values, and you know, let's see what kind of fun stuff what kind of donuts you can come up with. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift, right click and drag and make another one of those little dots, and I'm going to G and bring this down, because this mesh boolean should go in here, because this mesh boolean is the most important thing for the icing. This makes the icing the icing. Otherwise, it's just a second donut. So we have the icing and we have the donut. Now we're gonna make some sprinkles, and this is just like doing it in the non-Geo-Node tutorial, the Blender Guru tutorial. So I'm gonna Shift A, search. I'm gonna do join geometry again, and put that at the end of this wire. Then we have this real estate to play with. Shift A, search, distribute points on faces. Bada boom, bring that down, and all of a sudden we have a point and no icing, and that is okie dokie. And we're going to Shift A and search and instance on points and put that guy right there. And then we are going to Shift A, search, and not do anything right now. Sorry. We're going to go from the instance doc down, and we're going to type in SPHERE for sphere. And this guy is massive, so I'm going to say 0.1 inches. And now we have some floating. We have a floating dot. That's okay. We're going to go from on the distribute points on faces, click on random and make it Poisson disk. Gives us a few more options. Density max, 750. Maybe 900. You can kind of play with your values here. That's up to you. And then UV sphere, we're good with that. I'll maybe say 24 segments, lessen the geometry a little bit. Then in between the two, because we still have the flat shaded UV sphere, I'm going to Shift A, search, set, shade, smooth, and put that on the wire. And now we have the nice smooth spheres. And if you're wondering, hey, why do we see just the spheres and not the donuts? Things are going wrong. No, it's not. Remember, we got to join geometry. Because right now, what we're doing is we are feeding the icing that we've come up with the mesh boolean into distribute points on faces, which removes the original mesh and just shows the points. Then that's going into the instance on points, which now removes the points and shows just the instances, and going into the join geometry, which is going into what we see. So all we got to do to remedy that is join the geometry, and now we have a very interesting icing with some sprinkles. And frankly, to me, that's not enough. That really isn't. So let's go with like 1400, and you really can do however many you want. It is not, I would say at least 550, and then from there it's really up to you. 0.01 inches. Actually, no, we want distance. We want the distance minimum to be 0.05 inches. Why do we want that? Because each sphere is 0.1 inches. So that means that the distance from dot to dot should be, no, it needs to be 0.1. I'm a goober. That's okay. All right, there we go. So we've got sprinkles on a donut, on some icing, all being seen by the what we see node. Now, what are we missing? Two nodes. And it is this set material node. So I'm going to Shift A, or no, sorry, I'm going to Shift D, and then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say remove from frame, which is Alt P. I don't do this enough to know that hotkey. And then I'm going to put this right here between the mesh boolean and the lower join geometry for the icing join, or the sprinkle join geometry. Then Coming out of this instance on points, I'm going to shift D, the set material again. I'm going to put this between the instance on points and our join geometry. And then lastly, I am going to highlight all of those, drag them down a little bit, and Command J, put them in their frame to make our icing, or sorry, our sprinkles. I'm going to type in sprinkles color. I'm going to do a little pink just because I want to do pink. And then once again, label size all the way up. So this is roughly how your node tree should look. Technically, you could have one join geometry. Technically, you could have everything going to one join geometry. But there's a problem with that. And that is, so I'm going to cut those. And I'm going to cut that guy and that guy too. I'm just going to throw all of this into the same join geometry. So it works. But now, as you build out, you're going to have so many more wires coming out from this one guy that when you try to disconnect, I was going for the sprinkles. I got the icing. Okay, now let me try and get the, okay, I got the donut. Nice. So let me put that at the top and sprinkle. No, that's still the icing. Okay, it gets confusing. But if you do a bunch of join geometries, then this one going up is for the donut, this one going down is for the sprinkles, and then this one is for the icing and the sprinkles, and you can kind of follow the path that way to know exactly what you're trying to disconnect or what's connected. Thank you for watching this video. I know it's a little fast. Feel free to, I put in the beginning of this video, feel free to slow it down a little bit. Yeah, see you in the next video.